Hi, it's Josh Goldberg here, and in this video, I'm going to share with you the 3 most common mistakes that I see people make when they have a partner that has borderline personality disorder. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you the key to success when dealing with a borderline partner. So make sure you stick around till the end of the video. Now, just for the record, I just want to say that I've made all 3 of these mistakes myself in a past relationship with a borderline person. So please take these very seriously. Making these 3 mistakes is only going to make the relationship worse. It's only going to trigger the borderline person, and it's only going to bring more suffering and conflict onto yourself. Mistake number 1 is telling your borderline partner to go get therapy. Now, even though this might be the truth, this certainly is not the right way to approach it. Even with a spouse that doesn't have borderline personality disorder, this topic needs to be broached with the other person in a very delicate and smart way. Even more so with the borderline person that has extreme abandonment anxiety and pain avoidance, defense mechanisms, denial, gaslighting, and a whole list of ego defense mechanisms that you're going to encounter when you try and have this conversation with your borderline partner. So you might be asking yourself, if I can't bring up with my borderline partner to the fact that they need to go to therapy, so what on earth do I do, right? I'm stuck. So the answer is, if you wait until the end of the video, I'm going to share with you the most effective way to deal with this. Mistake number 2 is expectations. Putting expectations onto the borderline partner for things that they're not actually able to do is only going to bring failure, conflict, and unpleasant feelings to the relationship on top of what's already going on. Expectations in general are a very big setup to feel disappointment and frustration, and even more so with the borderline partner. Now, a lot of the times I hear from people that they're really expecting things from their borderline partner that the borderline person is just not able to do these. They weren't taught these things in childhood. They grew up in dysfunctional homes, and it just doesn't make sense for a partner of a borderline person to continually get frustrated and upset and angry that the borderline person is not giving them these things in a relationship, or they're not behaving a certain way. The borderline person doesn't know how to provide these things. So what does it help for the partner to continually get frustrated and angry with these expectations? It doesn't make any sense. Remember that the borderline person grew up in a home that was dysfunctional, and any expectations of functionality and healthy relationship that you put on them, they're only going to fail in those, causing extra irritation and frustration to you, and extra abandonment anxiety and other emotional issues for the borderline person. Mistake number 3 is reacting emotionally to the borderline person's behavior. This is a very common mistake. It's a very hard thing to deal with, but unfortunately, it just perpetuates the trauma narrative of the borderline person. It negatively affects your own health and your own emotional well-being, and it really doesn't help the situation for anyone for you to continually get emotionally triggered and react negatively to the borderline person's behavior. So you might ask yourself, so what do I do with all my unpleasant feelings and the provoking behavior and the criticism and the blame and the name calling and whatever it is that the borderline person is doing that hurts their partner? What do I do with these feelings? So it's a good question, and the answer really is that you have to become a master of managing your own emotions and regulating your feelings, rather than trying to get the borderline person that is often not emotionally available, especially when they're triggered, to try and validate and understand your feelings, because the borderline person, when they're triggered, they're not able to provide empathy at that time, which means that conflict resolution with the borderline person is often a cycle of pain and frustration. So you have to become a master of regulating and releasing your own feelings. This takes a considerable amount of work, and this leads me to the next point, which is very important. Okay, so if you have a borderline partner, how can you avoid continually making these 3 mistakes and to try and get the situation to a healthier point? The answer is you have to reach out to someone on the outside of the relationship that has a very good understanding of borderline personality disorder, and associated trauma issues that has actual real life successful experience in dealing with this type of personality. In terms of getting the borderline person to go to therapy and to resolve their childhood trauma issues, there are a long list of different approaches that can be employed, and each situation needs a different approach, and it's almost impossible for you to come up with this by yourself. It's very important to get this outside coaching and guidance to best navigate your situation. Most of the time, the person that is in a relationship with a borderline person goes down because they're trying to navigate this very difficult and confusing situation by themselves. Borderline personality disorder is very difficult to deal with. It's very hard to manage the other person's behavior and also the effects that it has on you. And if there's children involved, it only becomes even more difficult. And dealing with a borderline partner is one of the most confusing and difficult things that there is to do on this earth. Highly confusing. A lot of the behaviors that you have to employ in different situations when they're triggered are actually opposite of what you will naturally want to do. Okay, this needs considerable coaching and guidance. It is almost impossible to have any effectiveness in this type of relationship if you're operating by yourself. It's very hard to keep your feelings in check. It's very hard to have the right thoughts. It's very hard to understand what the borderline person is doing and why they're doing it. So working with someone on the outside of the relationship that is able to offer a well-informed, experienced, and non-biased view on what's going on can really help you to navigate through the relationship in a way that is effective for the borderline person and also keeps yourself as protected as possible. To effectively deal with borderline personality disorder, it requires a lot of open-mindedness, opposite behaviors, and unorthodox approaches. The standard way of doing relationships simply does not work with the borderline personality disorder person. It won't get anywhere, trust me. The high levels of abandonment anxiety and other trauma emotions that they experienced in childhood will simply confuse and distort a lot of the behaviors, and you will not know left from right. It's very important if you're in a relationship with a borderline partner to try and raise your understanding of borderline personality disorder, why they do what they do, where it comes from, what the behaviors might mean as much as possible, and then hopefully your expectations and the emotional impact that their behavior has will go down, making you feel more calm and collected so that you can more effectively deal with this difficult relationship. So the real takeaway from this video is don't go at it alone. You don't have to do this by yourself. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you want more of this type of content, and I'll see you next time. Stay gold.